Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Borough Board meeting, our first meeting of the new year. Just a couple of quick announcements. I know we have a full agenda on schedule tonight. At the desk, the table, there was a couple of flyers with upcoming events at Borough Hall. Just wanted to call your attention to two upcoming events. Number one, which is not on this calendar, but it's relevant to everyone in this room. Community board applications are due February 15th. So please, if you have not yet filled out your own community board applications for reapplication membership or to spread the word throughout your districts, please let everyone know. Applications are due February 15th back at Borough Hall. They're on our website, brooklyn-usa.org. Additionally, this year, under the passage of a new state law, 16 and 17-year-olds are eligible to serve on community boards. So if you know of older teenagers who you think would be good board members who have expressed an interest, please let them know that they are eligible to apply as well. Reach out to your schools and your districts, let them know. I think in years past, we've always said February 15th is the deadline, and then we say, okay, make it the 16th, make it the 18th, give it to us on the 21st. The word from on high this year is that that's not going to happen. So if you don't have it in by the 15th, unfortunately, we will not be considering your application after the fact. So please, please, please get it in by the 15th. Secondly, for those couples that are celebrating 50 years or more together, we're doing our annual champagne and cake toast here at Borough Hall on February 13th. So it's perfect. You can come to Borough Hall if you're celebrating 50 years, have your champagne, have your cake, and drop off your community board application at the same time. You see how we structured that? That's great. So if you have couples that you know of, or you yourselves are celebrating 50 years or more together, it does not have to be married for 50 years. They have to just be together for 50 years. That's what we're celebrating this year.
Does that mean one person, or you could accumulate?
I'm going to reserve the answer to that question to the people running that event. They just asked me to announce it. But you have to RSVP by February 11th, and the information is on the back of the blue schedule. So please spread the word about that as well. On the agenda tonight, actually before we go to the agenda, let's call the roll. We'll start with the community boards. Community Board 1. Community Board 2.
Here.
Community Board 3. Community Board 4. Community Board 5. Community Board 6.
Here.
Community Board 7.
Here.
Community Board 8.
Here.
Community Board 9.
Here.
Community Board 10.
Here.
Community Board 11. Community Board 12.
Here.
Community Board 13. Community Board 14.
Present.
Community Board 15.
Here.
Community Board 16.
Here.
Community Board 17. Community Board 18. Council members' offices. Councilmember Barron. Councilmember Cornegie.
Right here.
Councilmember Cumbo. Councilmember Deutsch. Councilmember Espinal. Councilmember Eugene. Councilmember Gentili. Councilmember Greenfield. Councilmember Lander.
Here.
Councilmember Levin.
Mateen Sarsi representing.
Councilmember Mizell. Thank you, Councilman. Councilmember Mealy. Councilmember Menchaca. Councilmember Reynoso. Councilmember Traeger. Councilmember Williams. And the Borough President. Okay. So as I said, we have a full agenda tonight. First up, we're going to have a presentation by the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey on the Tier 1 Environmental Impact Statement for the Cross Harbor Freight Program. After that, we have a presentation by the Prospect Park Alliance and a vote on the Flatbush Avenue Perimeter Reconstruction Project. And then lastly, we have a presentation by the New York City Economic Development Corporation on Blueprint to Success program. So it's a packed agenda, but hopefully we'll get everyone out of here as quickly as possible. Before we move on, I want to have the minutes of the December 2014 Borough Board meeting adopted.
Motion to approve.
Okay, are there any corrections before we approve? Motion to approve, is there a second?
Second.
Any opposed? All in favor? Aye. Minutes are adopted. Now we will move on to the presentation by the Port Authority on the Tier 1 Environmental Impact Statement for the Cross Harbor Freight Program. Matt Masters from the Port Authority will be presenting and then answer any questions from members of the Borough Board.
Thank you, Andrew. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for giving us this time on a very busy night for a very full agenda. We appreciate it. We appreciate it to be able to give you a brief overview, and I promise I'll be brief, on what the Tier 1 draft EIS statement is for the Cross Harbor Freight Program.
Can you hear it?
Can everybody hear me?
No.
Hello? Okay.
And jump right into it.
Okay, is that better? Well, thank you if you didn't hear me. I'm thanking you for giving us the time on this busy agenda night to present, and I will be brief, but I wanted to give you guys an overview of our draft EIS statement, Tier 1 EIS statement for the Cross Harbor Freight Program. A Tier 1 EIS, the federal process allows for tiering, Tier 1, Tier 2, for very complex, large projects in a very busy area like the City of New York that has many, many alternatives to be reviewed and looked at as a potential answer or solution to a project. So we have chosen with our federal partner, Federal Highways Administration, to break this EIS up into a Tier 1 and a Tier 2. The Tier 2 will become a future effort. That's not the subject of today's discussion. Tier 1 is a broad overview where I will present the problem and explain where we're going with that as we go along. But there's an opportunity for more detailed and intensive study when we narrow down some alternatives. Am I coming across okay, or is this kind of fading in and out? Fine? Okay, thank you. There is our agenda. I will go through the project timeline, our purpose and need, the alternatives that we've selected for this study, explain to you the gamut of environmental analysis that will at least be reviewed at a very high level for the Tier 1, and what our next steps are. What you see before you here is the current project timeline. We started this effort back in 2010, and here we are early 2015. Late in 2014, in November, we were able to publish the draft EIS that I'm here to present on. It's currently open for public comment. It started in November and will run through February 27th when the public comment period closes. We are currently embarking, starting tomorrow, on 7 public hearings, one of which will be in this very building a little later next week or the following week, and where all members of the public, interested parties, can come and give formal comments to the EIS, and we welcome any and all comments. What our next steps are after our public hearings are to compile all those comments and publish a final EIS, which we hope to do sometime in the late spring, followed up by a record of decision where we will take the information and come to a decision on what our next step should be. Okay, our basic purpose and need. We are trying to improve the movement of goods in the greater New York area across the harbor for freight, not passengers, but freight. We, as I'll show you in a few minutes, are extremely truck-centric in our area. So our, sorry, I'm not used to using the two things at once, I apologize. So our purpose and need has 4 main goals associated with it. The first one is to reduce trucks on our freight corridors. I'll explain how congested we are and how much of a problem it's causing us. Our second goal is to provide modal options, meaning we move so much of our freight and goods by truck. We have so much truck congestion. We're trying to reduce that and become more balanced, possibly using other modes of transportation, whether that be rail or waterborne, to improve our ability to move freight efficiently in the region, improve air quality, and move goods safely. Third goal is to enhance our resiliency and redundancy. God forbid another 9/11 or another Superstorm Sandy, the first thing that happens is the bridges and tunnels get closed. That's a real problem when only 14 days worth of fresh food and medicine exists in New York City at any given time. If the trucks can't get here, then the goods can't get here. And so we need to find ways to more efficiently and safely become a little more resilient and redundant. And our fourth goal is to support development and integrate what we want to do with land use strategies throughout the region in concert with many other efforts by many other folks. What you see before you here is a future look at 2035's National Highway Congestion Map. And if you look up in the northeast corner where we live, you can see it's a giant red blob. Every one of those red lines is a highly congested highway in our metro region. Currently, we have about 900 million truck tons coming through our region in our highways on a yearly basis, excuse me. When we jump to 2035, that will go up to almost 1.3 billion truck tons of freight. I'll just jump back and forth for a couple minutes, and you can see how the red lines between now and 2035 just get worse. And that's just more congestion, more quality of life issues relative to poor air quality and clogged roads. So I apologize for this very busy slide, but in a nutshell, 90% of the truck traffic, of the freight moving through our region is moved by trucks. The whole goal is to try to find a more efficient way to move some of that. We're never going to get rid of trucks. We don't wish to get rid of trucks. We just want to take and balance it out a little bit so we can improve movements through our region for freight and passengers, actually. Currently, if you were to look at how you could improve a rail infrastructure to get to points east of Hudson on the opposite side, or on our side of the river from New Jersey, a railroad, and this is just an example, would have to come all the way up north to a point called Selkirk, just south of Albany, and then come all the way back down the other side of the Hudson to enter across Hell Gate and into Brooklyn, Queens, and Long Island. It's 350 miles and takes a couple extra days to get freight here. It's fairly inefficient. The only option we have currently is a small car float operation that the Port Authority operates, known as New York and New Jersey Rail, which transports rail cars by barge from Greenville in Jersey City across to 65th Street in Brooklyn and back and forth. It's a small operation, but we think it's very important, and it's one of the things that gave us the idea, well, how can we improve freight, movement of freight? Well, that's one of the options that we're looking at. Okay, in terms of our EIS, it's a tier 1, like I mentioned, very broad, but we wanted to look at every alternative that was brought before us in the public scoping for this back in 2010 by others and other studies that had come before us. And so what we started with was 27 alternatives. And our document explains how we went from a list of 27, and we first screened it for fatal flaws. It's some technology that somebody had suggested, maybe that just is not it's just not feasible. It currently doesn't, it wouldn't be able to be worked. It's not proven technology. Those dropped out immediately. What we were left with, and the document goes through this in detail, I'm just, of course, giving you a very brief overview. What we were left with were 14 goals, and then we took those, 14 alternatives. And what we were left with there, we screened out and down relative to the 4 goals I mentioned before. Would they reduce trucks? Would they provide resiliency in the harbor, in the region to move freight in times of emergency? And that left us with a list of 10. So 10 alternatives made the cut, quote unquote, and was subject of detailed evaluations throughout the environmental impact statement that we've provided to the public and are seeking your comment on. The 10 alternatives are before you, and it happened to be 5 waterborne alternatives and 5 tunnel alternatives, and there is one other alternative being considered within the document, and that's called the no action alternative. The no action happens to be if you did nothing other than what was already planned. What impacts would the region have? Where would you be within the course of the study? The waterborne alternatives that were selected through that rigorous screening process include enhancing a rail car float, which I mentioned before. We have a very small operation, and if you were to enhance it, you could clearly bring more freight across in that manner. Some others involve truck ferries and truck floats, similar to the rails car float, although it's truck bodies and trucks, not necessarily rail cars. And then we have two container float operations, a row and a low, lift on, lift off, or roll on, roll off. This would be taking containerized cargo, putting it on a barge, excuse me, and bringing it across from one side of the harbor to the other, getting trucks off the road. Again, one of our major goals is to try to just reduce the amount of truck traffic on our crossings, which is, besides leading to the congestion and the air pollution, putting a huge burden on maintenance of that infrastructure. The infrastructure, as you're well aware, is aging, and we spend millions and millions of dollars trying to repair them on a constant basis, and the trucks admittedly do a lot of damage. The 5 additional alternatives are various or variations of a rail tunnel. We have a straight rail tunnel where trains would run through from points in Jersey straight down below the harbor and come out in Brooklyn. There's a shuttle service tunnel, a channel service similar to what's been done over in England, between France and England, where trucks would drive directly on to a train. The driver would sit in a passenger car, and the whole entire train would come across the side. The driver gets back into his truck on the other side, and off he goes. We have a tunnel with AGV technology, which automated guided vehicle, as well as a combination truck access and rail tunnel. This is an interesting one in where the bed of the tunnel has rail tracks embedded in it, and so part of the day it could be used for trucks, and part of the day it could be used for rail freight. This particular picture is an example of a tunnel similar to that. It's currently being used in Alaska. When you look at the various alternatives, one thing that jumps out is how many trucks you could physically divert off of our crossings by the various technology and alternatives. And when you look at the waterborne alternatives, all 5, you collectively, each one of them would give you approximately 600 trucks less a day on our bridges and tunnels. When you jump to the rail tunnel alternatives, you see that you start to get some real large numbers of trucks reduced on a daily basis, anywhere from 1,400 all the way down to maybe 5,000 trucks a day have the potential to come off our daily crossings. From a vehicle mile traveled standpoint, all of the alternatives, waterborne or rail, and again, I apologize for the busyness of the slide given the way we're set up here, but essentially what the slide shows is every single one of the alternatives that drastically reduces the number of vehicle miles that a truck would travel holistically within our region on an annual basis. I'm sorry, on a daily basis. And when you look at the waterborne alternatives, you're talking about somewhere between 17 and 30,000 miles less that would be traveled on our roads and congestion on our roads. The rail tunnel alternatives are anywhere between 111,000 up to 150,000 miles less per day on our roads. That, trucks sitting on the road, idling, gas used. It's quite a large reduction in vehicle miles. Now, some say that this is just a New York project, but this particular graphic demonstrates that it's important for New Jersey as well, because a huge portion of the trucks obviously travel through Jersey, and just in the northern New Jersey area alone, somewhere between 72 and 97,000 miles a day could be reduced. So it really is a regional project. It's good for both states, and we're hoping that some of these alternatives see it through to the next round of Tier 2 and get further studied. One thing that is important to mention is that the project is not just looking at the crossing, getting trucks off the road, off the bridges. It's also, let's use it as an example, a tunnel alternative. If we build a tunnel, the costs and the impacts associated is not just the tunnel itself. It's all the infrastructure that would need to be built to enhance it on either side, in some additional rail yards, potentially expanding existing rail yards. On the Bay Ridge branch, there are clearance issues that would need to be addressed. We would probably need to lower the track bed so that the higher level of current freight trains could get underneath the existing track, the existing crossings. And so there are a whole host of facilities for any one of these alternatives that would also be built. So tunnel is one, and then all the facilities on either side. If we enhanced rail cars or did a container barge operation, not only would you have your waterfront structures, but you would have the ancillary system behind it. It can't just be one piece. Some of the numerous rail yard locations that are being considered, because we don't want an impact on any one location, we have, and again, I apologize, I'm glad you have the slides in front of you, and all of these slides are shown in one way, shape, or form, if not the exact pictures, in the EIS itself. So we can make sure you get copies of that if you don't have copies or access to it, so that you can read this more legibly. But what this slide is demonstrating are various locations, and the green little labels that you can't see or read are proposed locations that might be a new rail yard, an enhanced rail yard, slightly larger. And then there are some that are actually existing that would also be considered for improving the system, again, system-wide. It's not just building a tunnel, it's not just building waterfront structures for barges, it's the whole system that needs to be improved. Costs and implementation. For the waterborne alternatives, the 5 mentioned, they range in a cost of about $100 to $600 million. The rail tunnel alternatives, given the engineering and the design and the complexity, are a lot more expensive. As you can see, they're somewhere between $7 and $11 billion. Neither is cheap, but we have a problem in the region for freight, and we know that we need to do whatever we can to try to improve that for the quality of life of everybody in the region. From a construction duration standpoint, the waterborne alternatives, in concert with the smaller cost, are in a 2 to 4 year range to build them out, and the rail tunnel alternatives are approximately 8 years to build out the entire facility. That's not just digging or boring a tunnel, but it's the ancillary facilities and yards that would be necessary to make the system efficient. The DEIS, even at a Tier 1 level, took a look at the standard list of environmental media, land use, neighborhood character, economic conditions, cultural resources, visual and aesthetics, energy and climate issues, air quality, noise, natural resources, hazardous materials, environmental justice issues. We've looked at every one of these, and again, we did not do a detailed analysis because that would come in Tier 2 when we are hoping to take, through our record of decision, the 10 alternatives that I've described today. We're hoping to take that down to a more manageable list, because when you go to a Tier 2 AIS, you're doing detailed engineering, you're looking at a specific alignment, so you know exactly what property issues there are, you know exactly what locations would need to be addressed from a traffic standpoint, from an air quality standpoint. Right now, we're just too broad to spend the kind of money it would be necessary to do that on 10 different alternatives when we have no idea of the actual locations of where they would be placed. We have general areas in the EIS, but no one area has been defined as the alignment, and that's a Tier 2 effort. And so again, we have addressed these in a broad-based regional situation for the Tier 1 EIS, details to come on a more concise set of alternatives into Tier 2. That leaves us with our next steps. Well, where we are is we're having meetings such like this to make sure the communities along the rail line, within the boroughs, in Jersey, on Long Island, are familiar at least enough with what we're looking at, what the problem is and why. We will continue these for another 2 or 3 weeks. At the same time, we're starting our public hearings, like I mentioned, first one being tomorrow in Manhattan, and then we have 6 others that will take place over the course of the next 2 weeks. The comment period formally closes on February 27th, and then at that point we will compile all the comments and issue a final Tier 1 EIS. Accompanying that, several months later, will be a record of decision where we, with our federal partner, Federal Highways Administration, will come to an understanding of exactly where we want the next step to be. Here's a list of where the public hearings are and their dates. I do believe it's, well, you have the slide, so you should have that. So the Bronx Borough, right here, February 3rd, between 4 and 8 p.m. We encourage you to come and provide comment. If you're unable to come, or written comment is just as important, we encourage you all, and anybody you want to encourage, to put comments in, because every comment will help us drive the decision. This is just another slide saying we want to hear from you. It's in the slides, so it has the comments, location, address, if you wish to mail comments in. And again, I encourage you and would welcome you to come to the hearing and provide testimony. At that point in time, I'd like to open it up to the floor if you have any questions. We've got our technical team, members of our technical team here with me to answer any questions that you may have. Please.
Questions from members of the Borough Board? Alvin?
Alvin Burke, Board 14. Does the DEIS specify the increased number of train trips that would be associated with each of the options?
Yes, they do. There are charts in there that show for every alternative exactly how many trains would be expected in every location.
Thank you.
Next question. Any other questions?
Community Board 10, just a couple of questions that I didn't see in the report that we got. The tunnel as it's proposed, how deep will it be in the harbor? Will it interfere with the ocean-going?
It will not interfere with the ocean-going vessels. The tunnel will start, the portal for on each of the side will start way inland, and because of the gentle slope of any freight tunnel or any rail tunnel necessary, it will start way inland on both sides, and will probably be at least 100 feet below the harbor, below the bottom of the channel.
I have about 2 or 3 other questions.
Sure.
How deep inland would,
On the Brooklyn side, I believe it would portal out about 10th Avenue.
And you said the rail bed would have to be lowered on the New York?
Along the Bay Ridge line, there are a number of road crossings that have very low, narrow openings for the current freight access. They were built a long time ago when freight cars were a lot smaller, and all the box cars and other types of cars now are much higher. It would probably be too disruptive to try to raise those crossings, but there is opportunity to actually lower the track bed so that you can gain the height necessary by going down as opposed to going up.
How low would you have to go?
Specifically,
Roughly?
It's very conceptual right now, that would be more of a tier 2 study, but our operating assumption right now is lowering the full length of the Bay Ridge branch by approximately 6 feet for the full 11 miles.
And is there, at this point in time, an idea of what kind of rails you would use, considering they're going through neighborhoods and already established things?
Yeah, we would use and propose continuous welded rail, so you don't have a seam except for every quarter of a mile. Again, the mitigation of any noise and vibration impacts to any particular neighborhood, any particular area, would be addressed in Tier 2. There's a lot of technology that can improve on what exists now, from even the locomotives running on that line with ultra-low emission locomotives available that can drastically reduce the pollution coming out. That's all available and would be the proper time to address it is when you know exactly what the impact is and exactly who would be impacted, and then how do you fix that.
And you'd be expected to use diesel?
Well, currently freight trains are being run with diesel, so I don't think we would propose a different technology. But for example, we, the Port Authority, are purchasing 3 new ultra-low emission locomotives that for our operation, and they are about 90% less emitting nitrous oxide and other emissions than what we're currently using. So you could almost argue that you could get 7, 8, 9 trains for the same emissions you're currently putting out right now.
And the money itself, whatever the alternative, if it goes from about, is there any amount of it earmarked or available?
We currently have no funds available currently for any of the alternatives to move into Tier 2. It would probably be needed to be a combination of federal, state, and other monies to do that. You saw the price tags. It's not cheap. It's certainly not within the means of one entity to do that. But we currently do not have any current funding to take it to that step.
And would it be fair to say that if a tunnel alternative shows, any of the tunnel alternatives, that wherever the traffic was let out, wherever that point would be, they'd have a lot more trucks dispersing from there, so they'd have to...
Well, one of the things that varies from one of the previous studies, and I'll ask my colleagues to correct me, is there was one large yard proposed for the end point of the tunnel previously. We have heard the communities and heard that, and what we are proposing to, or thinking of doing, again, is if a tunnel gets built or taken into Tier 2 and is proposed to be built, we are not going to have one large massive facility. We would break it up so there would be different locations. Some trains would go to one here, one would go there. So the distribution would be eased. It would be broken up. Anything to add on that?
The working theory right now is that freight destined for Brooklyn would go to a rail yard in Brooklyn. Freight going to Queens would go to a rail yard in Queens. And freight ultimately destined for Long Island would go out onto the island, as opposed to having one centroid somewhere in the city that's taking everybody's freight. That was a real concern the last time around with the project. So it would be something that would be enhanced. We're looking to leverage existing freight infrastructure. Well, we haven't gotten quite to that
Can you hear the
yet.
questions? Wait. Yeah, the question has to be repeated loud so we can get it on the video recording as well. Yeah.
There's a question about computerized routing.
I'm just saying about as far as computerized dispatching of cars. I mean, in this day and age, we can do that. I remember from Community Board 10, we had in the previous incarnation, previous studies, I remember we had said, we motioned to have a way of having electric power. I mean, diesel electric locomotives can convert to electric. It's done every day, all the time on Metro North. The diesel locomotives convert to the third rail. I mean, we thought that's a way of possibly, feasibly, of having electric powered trains instead of having to go through even at the low. We can have zero emissions at that point. And as far as even ameliorating the conditions, I know the biggest concern is about the vibrations, the noise. I mean, we can, can design things. You can encapsulate the tunnel, so it is not it doesn't really, you won't even know it's there for that matter. So what you always think design-wise. Also, you mentioned about
Larry,
public
you have a
entities, the
question?
Port Authority.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Have you ever considered possibly funding using private money? Because CSX you mentioned, and the Norfolk Southern. These are railroads. They have very good credit rating and they are very prosperous. they could probably possibly make this a public-private project.
Everything you said is valid. All the technology that's available today and into the coming years will be looked at, would be investigated. We just can't do it right now because we don't know the specific alignment. We don't know what alternatives would be taken to that next step. But when we get to that point, everything you say will be addressed. Every issue, noise, vibration, any technology that can improve and reduce it is on the table. Relative to,
All right, I'm not.
yes,
Yeah.
in terms of funding as well, private, absolutely.
Joan?
On Community Board 7, we are right close to Bay Ridge. Bay Ridge Sunset Park is right along 65th Street.
Okay.
The improvement where you say from New York to New Jersey to Bay Ridge, have you done an impact study on the trucks that would be picking up from the trains that would be delivering on 65th Street and the trucks that would be bringing goods into 65th Street?
Okay, the tunnel itself would not actually,
No, I'm not saying the tunnel. I'm saying the trucks have to bring the goods to the trains,
yes,
and they have to load the trains.
yes,
And if the trains come loaded, they have to be unloaded.
correct, yes.
So we have trucks that are coming onto 65th Street to either deliver or pick up. We need an impact study, do we not?
Absolutely.
You're absolutely correct, and we have looked at the number of trucks that would be generated by the number of trains that we're projecting for each of the options.
You have that now?
Yes, those are in the DIS. I don't know them offhand, but the numbers are there. And they're in terms of daily numbers. We don't allocate them to specific roadways yet. That would come in Tier 2, but we have the total daily truck numbers that would come to each location with each of the alternatives.
Gary?
Yes, Gary Riley from Community Board 6. First, it's encouraging to see that maybe 100 years on, we'll get to the Port Authority's original mission of bringing the cross harbor freight. I'm interested to know if in the EIS you have crunched the numbers on the impacts to existing Port Authority facilities, the loss of revenue to those existing crossings, and also the maintenance numbers, because I imagine there'd be some maintenance savings involved.
Well, I don't know if we've specifically dialed in and gotten those exact numbers. We have looked at trying to see what maintenance improvements, but again, if you recall the early slides where you showed the growth in freight from 900 million tons up to 1.3 millions of tons, that additional freight is going to come. So I don't know how much incrementally you could say is my experts are going to help.
We can estimate, you're talking about the damage to roadways from the trucks that would be taken off the road. Yes, we have some costs in the DIS. If they're not finally broken enough, we can address it as a response to comment, because that's something that can be done based on the mileage that would be reduced. The maintenance damage can be calculated. Did that answer your question?
The first part was about the loss of revenue from existing crossings, and the second part was the mitigation, which is the savings from maintenance.
Right. Matt, can you address the?
I don't think we addressed loss of revenue on the existing crossings in terms of the diversion of trucks, because the study was to try and divert trucks. So I don't think we focused on that particular. So that's a good comment, and we should come up with that, because That's good information that everybody should have when they're making decisions. So I can't answer your question directly, but I think we should address it.
Barry? Barry?
Barry Spitzer, Community Board 12. Have you considered coming to the individual community boards that are impacted by this and talk to the community board members and to the community about this?
Well, we would have loved to come to every community board. Time did not allow it. As much as we extended the comment period publicly through the EIS process, we just don't have the staff right now to visit every community board. If and when we get to a point in Tier 2 that we have a specific alignment and we will have a very defined route of a smaller number of alternatives, I think we would be visiting every community and getting direct input from every single community. So here we...
Tracks. How many tracks?
Within the Bay Ridge branch, there's currently one, and we would double it, and with some additional sidings. There's room. There's room within the existing siding. It would not be expanded.
So at any given time, there would be a maximum of
2 tracks.
That's it.
With some additional sidings where a train could be pulled off to the siding while another train passes.
I want to echo Barry Spitzer's question and impress on you the importance of coming to the individual community boards, which may have different opinions from board to board, but it's important for you to assess those differences. And I have a specific question with respect to the cost estimate, and that is whether the cost estimate has taken into account the costs of moving or depressing or shifting the Buckeye pipeline that runs parallel to the track that's there now.
Yes, it does. That's why we made a point in the slide, one of the slides, to say it's not just the crossing. We want to make sure that everybody knows that it's to make the entire system work. So if we have to move the Buckeye pipeline to add the second line in the Bay Ridge cut, it's included in our cost estimate. And I do agree with you on the different community boards having different opinions. That's why I encourage every community board to please come to the public hearings and provide your specific comments.
Well, the problem with that proposal is that most community boards have fixed schedules that are published well in advance, and it's impossible for the community board to go through its own deliberative process in order to come up with a resolution that the chair can present to you at the public hearing on February 3rd. So this particular process, we very much appreciate that Borough Hall has done this meeting, and we're very serious about that.
Okay,
But with your calendar showing public meetings starting in November 2014, here we are well into January 2015, and this is the first exposure that we've had to your agency's proposal, other than the proliferation of the distribution of DEIS itself.
Well, I respect that. We did try to get the word out in every way possible in publications, press releases, newspaper articles. We did what was within our means to do, but I certainly respect your comment.
Any other questions from members of the Borough Board? Brian? And we'll wrap it up after this.
When you talk about the efficiencies that you expect to have,
Yeah, use the microphone.
when you talk about the efficiencies that you expect to achieve, and you're talking about specifically on, I think it's page 6. Maybe not. Oh, page 7. You say 600 trucks is the maximum efficiency for the waterborne alternatives. Is that all 5 of them would save
No.
the same amount, or that's the best?
I
terms
believe
of
they were all
efficiency.
about the same.
Right.
For any one of those 5, it was approximately 600 trucks daily.
What limits it? I mean, there's no way to have a better efficiency with more barges or
Well, there's
more
only so
ferry?
much, I mean, it takes time to ferry or barge something across the harbor. You got to load and unload. It's not as seamless as, say, a tunnel would be to be able to just take a train and move.
And out of the waterborne alternatives, which one is the most efficient?
Do you know?
It's the railcar float,
Which one?
the enhanced railcar float.
Oh, okay.
Where you put full rail cars onto a barge, bring it to the other side, and then a locomotive builds the train and off it
in
Okay.
terms of getting the most cars across.
Right, with the lowest pollution and the most fuel saved. And then the other question I had was, where do you think the Buckeye would move to? Would it stay in the same?
It stays within the same cut. It just gets moved over and I believe the Buckeye pipeline would stay where it is. It would just be shifted within the same cut out of the road, out of the rail bed.
And then you had talked about a 10th Avenue portal where the trains will come out
Within
on
the Bay
rail.
Ridge line. So
So
it would
around
come up
65th?
and just continue that line, yes.
Okay. At 10th Avenue.
Yes.
We have one last question, Joan?
That's it.
Could you go in a little bit more detail about the tunnel?
What about the tunnel? I'm happy to answer a question. Or
It's going to come out at 10th Avenue, you say?
approximately, yes. But
So-
not at street level, within the Bay Ridge cut. It's still at 10th Avenue, it's still below grade, right? So it's still within the cut of the Bay Ridge branch. It's not up on the street. It would come up and dovetail with the existing lines that are on the Bay Ridge branch.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, great. Any other questions before we wrap up here? Okay, thank you very much for presenting. Just to reiterate, I think Alvin's point's well taken about community input, especially at the next step of the process. When we want the
We agree
tier 2.
100%.
When you have a more defined plan moving forward, I think that'd be, we come back here to the Borough Board for further discussions, and then I think the community boards that would be affected would definitely benefit from having a more in-depth discussion, presentation, and participation in the process.
As the process narrows, I fully agree with you 100%.
And community boards that border.
Correct, yes.
Absolutely. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. I know you have a busy night.
Thank you. Okay. I know we were joined by a few other members as well. I caught Community Board 5. I caught Council Members Cumbo, Greenfield, Menchaca, and Williams. Did I miss anyone? All right, we're all good. Okay. At this time, we're going to move on to a presentation by the Prospect Park Alliance and a subsequent vote on the Flatbush Avenue Perimeter Reconstruction Project. And we have representatives from the Prospect Park Alliance here to present, and then they will answer any questions from members of the Borough Board. So let's get your presentation.
Great. Thank you, Andrew. My name is Sue Donahue. I'm the relatively new president and park administrator for the Prospect Park Alliance. We're so pleased to be here tonight to be presenting to you the redesign of the Flatbush Avenue portion along the side of Prospect Park. This is a really exciting project for the Alliance and a very important one to us, as well as to our neighbors and the surrounding community. It's desperately in need of enhancement, and this project is going to be the first phase in a multi-phase effort on the part of the Alliance to renovate and upgrade this area. We were really fortunate to receive funding for this project from the borough president as well as from Councilmember Cumbo to move forward on this. And so I'm going to hand it over to Christian Zimmerman, our Vice President of Design and Construction, who's going to go through the project with you. Thank you.
Good evening. Let's see, does this do? Oh, it doesn't show a laser on the screen. Okay, so as Sue said, this will be a multi-phase project. We're really excited to reconstruct Flatbush Avenue. It's in dire need of an upgrade. We're starting up at Grand Army Plaza, and we will be going approximately 800 feet in the first phase. The total section of the project, or the total Flatbush Avenue in this area, is about 2,300 feet. So depending on how we have it funded, we should finish it in a few years. Historically, it was one of the first sections of the park that was constructed as part of the original design in 1865. It was also, there was at a time, I don't know if you can see, these are such small images, but there was originally proposed a connector bridge from Mount Prospect Park to Prospect Park when it was the reservoir. So that's not in this project, but it was an interesting idea that they would do. It has changed through a number of years. When the automobile came into popularity around 1915, they rerouted the bridle path because they no longer wanted cars and horses to share the road. And then that changed forever, or for now. The perimeter, if you look at our perimeter, it generally has an inside verge, a sidewalk, and an outside verge. On Flatbush Avenue, there is no inside verge. That's where the bridle path was put in. As you can see, if you've ever walked it or run it, it's in horrible shape. The sidewalk's cracked. The fence is in horrible shape. There are very few trees. There isn't any park lighting in this area. The only lights we have are street lights. So that's about every 250 feet. It's very dark in this area and not very welcoming. So what we'll be proposing to do is to reconstruct the entire length. We will be putting in this first section, similar to what we have in our other restoration projects, except we're going to grass verges like we've done on Eastern Parkway. So it'll be a grass verge on the inside with Borough President bench, B poles, B9s, with LED lighting. DOT has converted to that, so all our lighting now will be LED. There'll be street trees, there's garbage cans, all the site amenities that we've been putting in. And then the sidewalk is a exposed aggregate, reinforced concrete sidewalk. Is Mesa Beige is the color, and we use a Long Island pea gravel that kind of fits in with Prospect Park West, Prospect Park Southwest. We've done little sections at Lincoln Road and a little bit on Ocean Avenue. And then on the outside verge, we'll redo the lights, and we'll plant trees as well in that area. And the lights will be the M pole, which is inside the park and along the perimeter. So it's the mast arm. You also see that on Eastern Parkway from Plaza Street east to Washington Avenue. So it's that kind of look in there. It's a pretty straightforward project. We're in design right now, so this is the early stages of the design. And once we finish this, then we'll continue on in the next level. Hopefully we'll be in construction within a year. That's the goal. That just shows you the arrangement and the layout. So you have trees in an alternate pattern as well with the benches and the furniture. Any questions?
Sure. It's just a little bit hard to see in the diagram. So if that's just a sidewalk, and there's not a bike lane that's involved?
We do not have a bike lane. That's a DOT jurisdiction. So we're just doing the curb to the fence, that 30-foot park section. We're not touching the roadway at all.
That picture on the upper right is showing a stone wall, like
Yeah.
exists along Prospect Park.
That's Prospect Park West.
So you're not putting that?
We're not putting a stone wall. No. No. We have, so the perimeter of the park has a number of different fence treatments. I mean, there is a wall there, and then there's different fence heights. So we're proposing a 5-foot fence. That's what we've been doing in other sections, the majority of the park.
Any other questions? Could you just, and I know we had a copy of the presentation sent over originally. Is this the same presentation, or is there a change? No changes were made to it? And everyone should have received a copy as well, but we'll send it out to everyone again so they have it. I know it's kind of hard to see some of the little details on the screens here, so we'll send that out to everyone. If there's no other questions, at this time we want to take a vote on this proposed project for the reconstruction of the Flatbush Avenue perimeter reconstruction project. So the Borough President's office will make a motion to approve the design of the proposed Flatbush Avenue perimeter reconstruction project as presented by the Prospect Park Alliance pursuant to Section 85 of the New York City Charter. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Any discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Abstention from Councilmember Williams' office. Okay. Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Okay, we're just rolling right along here, guys. Our final presentation is a presentation by the New York City Economic Development Corporation on the Blueprint to Success program. You have a presentation you got to put in? Okay.
Good evening. My name is Claudia Flores, and I'm the Senior Program Manager for EDC's Blueprint to Success program. And I just wanted to thank you all for having us here today to present this exciting initiative for minority and women-owned contractors. I just want to give you a brief walkthrough of our agenda for today. We're going to give a little discussion about our EDC's overall Opportunity MJBE program, and then we're going to dive deep into the details of Blueprint to Success. Then we're going to go through the application process and the timeline for the program, and then we'll have some time for Q&A. So as one of the main drivers of the city's economic development agenda, EDC looks to increase the quality of life for all New Yorkers and to increase the participation of diverse business communities. And in doing so, we created Opportunity MGBE to offer support and build capacity for certified minority, women, and disadvantaged business enterprises. So we do this in a couple of different ways. The first way is that we set MGBE goals on EDC projects, and we also have a set of capacity building initiatives that help build up these MJBEs. The first one is our Kickstart program, and that is our upfront capital and cash flow support loan program. And that's given to any MGBE that's working on any public sector project. We also teach MGBEs to manage their cash flow and build a sound financial infrastructure in their business through our financial literacy program that is called Money Matters. And of course, Blueprint to Success, which we go into later. And we've also increased the transparency of and access to information about all of our projects on our website. So Blueprint to Success is one of our pillar programs, and it was created in 2012 to build capacity for MGB contractors. Now, when we started this project, until now, we've graduated over 30 qualified firms, and we've helped them attain over $7 million in public sector construction contracts. All the participants, including this upcoming cohort, will receive an in-depth assessment of their firm. They will get one-on-one technical assistance as well, and they will have direct opportunities to network within our EDC's network of construction management firms and our primes and general contractors. New this year, we have R6 Catalyst, Bach Capital, and EMDO Enterprises. These are our new consultants under a new model. R6 Catalyst is an MWBE. Bach Capital is a Brooklyn, it's a Brooklyn local CDFI bank, and they also work a lot with small businesses, and a lot of those are certified MWBEs. And EMDO Enterprises is also an MWBE. R6 Capital is going to be taking over the assessment process for all of the participants. And they are a management consulting firm that does this for many large firms. So they will do this by conducting in-depth interviews and office visits, as well as site visits to make sure to learn how they're operating while they're on site and on a job. So they will deliver an in-depth assessment report at the end of the assessment process, and that report will also serve to create the curriculum that is going to be delivered by Bach Capital and EMDO Enterprises. So this year, we are focusing on 2 modules. The first module is the technical and administrative training. We are trying to focus on how to get these MDBs to submit timely and full payment requisitions so that they can get prompt payment. We're teaching them how to process certified payroll and use AIA forms, as well as how to manage and administer their contract and to see if they can negotiate and make a profit on their project. The second module is the business management education module, and this focuses around building a sound accounting and financial infrastructure for the business, especially being that it's in construction and it's a very different model than any other normal business infrastructure. We'll also look at the business's strategic plan and how they're implementing their growth plan throughout the length of the program. And we also have a marketing consultant on board that is going to give branding and marketing consulting to each firm to make sure that when they have these opportunities to network, they're going to be able to market their company and be able to attain these opportunities. The last piece of the program is our one-on-one assistance model, and that employs business coaching for all of these firms throughout the program to ensure that they're on the right growth plan. And they're also going to have access to a group of construction experts throughout the length of the program, just in case they need technical assistance on whatever issue that may arise while they're on the job. So the reason why we're here today is because we would like to increase the participation of Brooklyn firms in our program. As you can see from the chart, Brooklyn firms make up about 27% of the city certified MWBs in construction. But we've only had 5 firms participate in the last 2 iterations of the program. So we would definitely like to increase that number. So I just want to give you a few key dates of the program. So we're launching the application for Blueprint to Success on Monday, and we will be sending all city-based MGBEs, the borough offices, community organizations, and all of our community partners an email blast detailing some of the details that you have on the info sheets in front of you. And we'll also be sending a postcard to remind all of the participants of the information session that's happening on February 26th. Now, the application is due on March 6th. And then after that, we will select a group of 20 to 25 firms to partake in the program. The assessments are going to begin very quickly after that, and hopefully we'll have everything done and we'll be able to launch a curriculum on May 2015. So if you have any questions, all the information about the program and the applications are on our website, and that is www.nycedc.com/blueprint. And I just want to point out that this program is open for certified MWDBEs and eligible to be certified MWDBEs. So if there is a eligible firm that you think that would greatly benefit from this program, please send them over to us, and we'll work with them to make sure that they are certified with the city. And with that, I'll open up for questions.
Any members of the Borough Board have any questions?
So there may be firms that have gone through another program to become certified as FWBEs, such as the School Construction Authority, and that has a really robust FWBE development program that wants to get into the pipeline to do business with EDC, but may not require the types of training and support services because they've gotten that through another program. So is EDC working with programs like that so that these firms aren't expected to go through duplicative processes, but folks from those cohorts are included in receiving notice from EDC of opportunities to contract?
Yes, definitely. So one of the things that we do is the assessment, and that's what's going to let us know how they're standing when they come out of any other program. And that assessment is used to create their specific curriculum. If they don't need specific classes on, let's say, how to manage payroll or how to negotiate the contract, then they don't need to go through those classes. So each individual firm will have an independent curriculum. So it might be just 2 classes or 2 modules or nothing at all. Now, one of the benefits of this program is that you do get business coaching and technical assistance while you're, if you have any jobs in the public sector. So that would be one of the benefits for any of the participants that have participated in SCA's program or the city's SBS program. So, yeah.
Any other questions from members of the Borough Board? You can just, I think our office would be happy to send that out as well to kind of complement the efforts that you guys are doing to each of the MWBEs in Brooklyn.
Great,
So we can connect out afterwards and do that.
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Do any members of the Borough Board or their representatives have any old business they'd like to discuss? Any new business we'd like to discuss? Just a friendly reminder, I should have done this at the beginning of the meeting, we need updated Borough Board designation forms completed for all community boards and council members. I sent out the forms at the end of December. There are forms here as well. I only got 6 back, and there are 34 members of the board, so a lot of people have not yet submitted their forms. It's really important that we have updated information and the authorized representatives to be here for each community board and each council member's office. So please, if you haven't taken the form yet or you don't have it, there are forms at the desk. Please take it and send it back to me as soon as possible. You can email it to me. You can drop it off at Borough Hall. Either way, we do need those forms, and we'll be following up with those offices individually and hounding you until we get them. So don't make us hound. Just get it back to us as soon as possible. With that, I'll say our next meeting will be Tuesday, March 3rd. There will not be a meeting in February because we're at the end of the month now, and the President's holiday, it makes scheduling very difficult. So we're going to meet again on March 3rd. Is there a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting? I don't see, is there a motion somewhere? Someone, please say so. Okay. Is there a second to that motion? You guys don't want to stick around for a little bit longer? It's only 7:15. Okay, all in favor of adjourning? All right, great. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Have a good night.